depends on which part of my teenage years you're talking about, right? When you think about where I grew up down on in the West End on the 4421 Parker. We had a house, me, my mom, my brothers, and my sister. I had a brother and two sisters. We grew up on 4421 Parker. I had two aunts who lived around the corner on 44th Street, right? So they were all in walking distance. And one of my aunts, my grandmother, lived with them. So the network was pretty tight there, right? Knew everybody on my block. I knew how to get to places, how to go places. Felt very connected to that neighborhood, very network-ish type of neighborhood that if I look back on it now, I know a lot of people were watching over me, right? So I felt real connected. We could walk to the Winn-Dixie, and folks would be bringing their groceries out, so they would take care of you. If you helped them with their grocery, they'd give you a quarter. Didn't need to, but they did just because they knew you needed a little money in your pocket, and they were concerned about who was in the neighborhood, and they were watching out. Played football when I lived down there, so I was very connected to the Pee Wee Football League and that family. So if you're that neighborhood, I was very, very connected to. So that was all the way from elementary through the 7th grade. So my early teenage years, I was highly connected to that neighborhood network. So at the 7th grade, my mom moved us to another part of the city, which was the East End, which we had nobody around, right? So it was just us in this house. Didn't know anybody on the street, none of the neighbors, and felt very disconnected. Everybody looked different, right? So we went from a predominantly black neighborhood with like one white lady that lived across the street who took us to Bible school. So she was a big part of my network too, right? Every summer, she would take us to vacation Bible school, right? So we knew a week we were all piling in this lady's car going to vacation Bible school. So when we moved out to the East End, that network was taken away, right? Family came out and stayed with us just because they wanted to come out to the East End. But the whole ideal of walking from my house to my aunt's house to go see my grandmother, to go to my friend's house up the street and go hang out at these different places was totally, totally different, right? So it took about, until the age I was driving for me to find a network in my new neighborhood, right? So, because it was so spread out. And the people that I hung out with didn't live in a neighborhood, they lived in different neighborhoods. I only had a network when I was in school. So the dynamics was two totally different things, right? The one that I remember and the one I'm most fond of is the one in the West End from my early ages. It's just because I just knew what that was, and it just felt more comfortable, and it felt more like who I was compared to the next one, which was a little bit trickier to figure out. But one of the things me and my siblings always say, though, is that what would you have missed if we didn't move, right? The move actually expanded our worldview compared to what our worldview would have been a whole lot limited if we would have stayed in this one neighborhood. But moving to this new neighborhood, it built my network in ways that I would have never have been able to build it by staying downtown in the West End. But at the time, as a teenager, that's not what you wanted, right? But now I see that my worldview is so much bigger, right? Going to college and all that stuff was not a conversation we had in the West End, but in the East End, everybody was going to college, and I always knew I wanted to go, whether I was doing good in high school or not. I knew I was going to go to college. So it depends on what time frame you're asking me about networks, and neighborhood networks in particular, of how they worked for me, right? So they're different. And then if you think about the one I'm in now, the work that I do is network centric, but the neighborhood that I live in, I don't do network centric stuff in, right? I don't talk to the folks the same way I talk to the folks in the neighborhoods that I work in, which is totally crazy sometimes, but it makes sense because I'm tired of talking and I don't want to do it no more. So that would be my experience with network neighborhoods as a teenager.